All right, so ready to dive deep into a classic.
Always ready.
Awesome. Well, today we're tackling Much Ado About Nothing, one of Shakespeare's most beloved comedies.
You know, it's amazing how a play written over 4 centuries ago, probably around like 1598 or 1599, can still feel so relevant, so fresh.
Totally. I mean, the themes of love, deception, witty banter, they're timeless.
Absolutely timeless.
So for this deep dive, think of us as your guides, walking you through the main plot points, the key characters, just enough so you can really appreciate the brilliance of the whole thing.
Right, so you're not getting bogged down in the details, but you can
No.
enjoy all the twists and turns, the humor, the drama, all of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to really set the scene for you, picture this. We're in Messina, a vibrant, sun-drenched city in Sicily.
Ah, Messina. The perfect backdrop for a story brimming with passion, both the romantic kind and, well, sometimes the kind that leads to some very heated arguments.
Oh yeah, things definitely get heated in this play.
They do indeed.
And to make sure we're bringing you the most well-rounded understanding, we've consulted a whole range of sources, plot summaries from Spark Notes in the Folger Shakespeare Library, insights from the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust and Lit Charts, explanations from Save My Exams and the RSC, even a really helpful YouTube video breaking it all down.
And of course, we couldn't forget good old Wikipedia.
Of course. So you're getting a comprehensive view of the play's narrative. Our aim isn't to analyze every single line.
Right, that would take forever.
We just want to give you a clear, engaging overview of the main events and the big ideas Shakespeare's exploring.
So you walk away feeling like, okay, I get it. I see what all the fuss is about with this much ado about nothing.
Exactly. So let's jump right into Act I. The action kicks off at Leonato's house in Messina.
Leonato, the governor of Messina, a very important man.
Right. And everyone's buzzing because news arrives that Don Pedro, the Prince of Aragon, is on his way back after a big military victory.
A triumphant return, with his whole army in tow.
Big celebration. And among those returning with Don Pedro are Claudio, a young nobleman who's proven himself in battle.
A rising star, very popular.
And then there's Benedict, known for his sharp wit and, shall we say, his aversion to marriage.
Oh, Benedict. Always ready with a clever quip and a strong opinion about the folly of love.
But there's another figure who arrives with Don Pedro, his illegitimate brother, Don John.
Now, Don John, you can tell right away he's not exactly overflowing with joy at this celebratory atmosphere.
Yeah, there's a definite shadow hanging over him.
And it's important for you to understand, back then, being illegitimate often came with a lot of stigma, a sense of being an outsider.
It could really impact your social standing and your opportunities in life.
Absolutely. And you get the feeling that Don John's carrying around a lot of resentment, maybe even bitterness towards his brother and everyone else who seems to have an easier path.
Right from the start, you sense that he might be trouble.
Trouble with a capital T.
Definitely. Now, as the festivities get underway, there's this really entertaining dynamic that emerges between Leonato's niece, Beatrice, and Benedict.
Oh, these two. They're absolute firecrackers.
Right. It's this constant back and forth, this verbal sparring match filled with witty insults and clever put-downs.
They seem to absolutely relish trading barbs with each other.
And they both make it very clear that they have absolutely zero interest in love or marriage.
Oh, they're vehemently opposed to it. At least that's what they claim.
But you know what? For us, the audience, it's almost too much protesting, wouldn't you say?
I think you're onto something there. It's like they're trying a bit too hard to convince everyone, maybe even themselves, that they're immune to Cupid's arrow.
Yeah, there's definitely a spark between them, a chemistry that all the witty insults can't quite hide.
And that, my friend, is what makes their relationship so captivating to watch unfold.
Now, in contrast to Beatrice and Benedict's fiery dynamic, we have Claudio, who, upon seeing Hero, Leonato's daughter, is immediately smitten.
It's a classic case of love at first sight, or at least a very intense and sudden infatuation.
He's completely head over heels.
Totally. And he confides in Benedict, who, as you might expect, throws a bucket of cold water on his friend's sudden passion.
Oh, yeah. Benedict's not buying it. He's all cynical and skeptical about the whole thing.
Typical Benedict.
Yep.
But then Claudio turns to the much more supportive Don Pedro and reveals his feelings for Hero.
And Don Pedro, being the stand-up guy that he is, offers to help Claudio win Hero's heart.
A true bro move.
He comes up with this plan to woo Hero on Claudio's behalf at a masked ball, disguised, of course.
Which was a common custom at the time. These masked balls were all about intrigue and hidden identities.
It's a grand romantic gesture. But, as we'll see, Masks and disguises can also create a lot of room for misunderstanding and manipulation.
Oh, yeah. Things are definitely going to get complicated.
Now, Don John, remember him? He's been lurking in the background observing all of this. And when his servant Baracchio tells him about Don Pedro's plan to help Claudio, well, let's just say Don John's scheming mind starts working overtime.
He sees an opportunity to stir up some serious trouble.
This is his chance to get back at his brother and Claudio, to really mess things up for everyone.
His resentment and bitterness are just simmering beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to boil over.
So Act 2 begins with that masked ball at Leonardo's house. As planned, Don Pedro, hidden behind his mask, charms Hero and successfully woos her, supposedly for himself.
The deception is in full swing.
And Don John, seizing this moment of confusion, approaches Claudio and whispers a lie in his ear that Don Pedro actually intends to marry Hero himself.
He's playing on Claudio's insecurities, exploiting any doubts he might have about his own worthiness.
And unfortunately, Claudio falls for it. Hook, line, and sinker.
Which makes you wonder, how strong is his love for Hero if he's so easily swayed by a bit of gossip?
Right. It raises some questions about his character, about how quick he is to believe the worst.
But thankfully, this little misunderstanding is quickly resolved when Don Pedro reveals the truth to Claudio, presenting Hero to him with her father's blessing.
Crisis averted, at least for now. But it's a clear warning sign that Don John is not going to give up so easily.
Oh no, he's just getting started.
Now, amidst all this drama, we get a bit of comic relief as Don Pedro, Claudio, and Leonardo decide to play a little trick of their own.
A trick designed to bring two very stubborn people together.
Beatrice and Benedict. They're the targets of this well-intentioned scheme.
The plan is to make Benedict believe that Beatrice is hopelessly in love with him.
They think that if he hears enough people talking about Beatrice's secret love for him, he'll eventually start to believe it himself.
And maybe, just maybe, his own feelings will start to surface.
It's all a bit manipulative, sure, but their hearts are in the right place.
They just want to see their friends happy, even if it takes a little nudge in the right direction.
Now, while all this matchmaking is going on, Don John and Baracchio are busy hatching a far more sinister plan.
A plan specifically designed to wreck Claudio and Hero's upcoming wedding.
This is where things get really dark.
Baracchio comes up with this idea. He'll meet with Margaret, Hero's serving woman, at Hero's bedroom window that night.
Under the cover of darkness, of course.
And Margaret will be wearing Hero's clothes.
So anyone watching from a distance could easily mistake her for Hero.
Exactly. John's going to make sure that Claudio and Don Pedro witness this staged encounter, leading them to believe that Hero is being unfaithful.
It's a cruel, calculated plan that preys on the societal obsession with female chastity and the power of appearances.
A woman's reputation could be destroyed by even the slightest hint of impropriety.
It was a very different time, with very different social norms.
It was indeed.
Now, Act 3 sees both of these deceptive plans starting to unfold. In Leonardo's garden, Leonardo, Claudio, and Don Pedro stage their conversation about Beatrice's supposed love for Benedict, knowing full well that he's hiding nearby, listening to every word.
Poor Benedict. He doesn't suspect a thing.
And, as you might expect, he's completely taken in by their performance. You can practically see his mind working, trying to reconcile this new information with his long-held belief that Beatrice can't stand him.
He starts to question everything he thought he knew about her.
And you know what? It's actually kind of endearing to see this tough, witty guy suddenly vulnerable and confused about his feelings.
It shows that even the most cynical among us can be susceptible to love's power.
Now, in a perfectly symmetrical scene, Hero, Margaret, and Ursula do the same thing to Beatrice, leading her to believe that Benedict is head over heels in love with her.
Beatrice, who's always so quick to deflect any talk of love, is suddenly thrown off balance.
She starts to wonder if maybe, just maybe, she's misjudged Benedict all along.
And just like Benedict, her pride starts to crumble as she contemplates the possibility that she might actually have feelings for him.
It's a brilliant setup by Shakespeare, showing how easily our perceptions can be manipulated, especially when it comes to matters of the heart.
Especially when we're already predisposed to wanting to believe something.
Exactly. Now, as night falls, Don John sets his evil plan in motion. He leads Claudio and Don Pedro to Hero's window, where they witness Baracchio and Margaret, dressed as Hero, seemingly engaged in a clandestine meeting.
The stage is set for disaster.
And tragically, Claudio and Don Pedro are completely fooled by what they see.
They're convinced that Hero has betrayed Claudia, that she's not the virtuous woman they thought she was.
Claudio's heartbroken and enraged, and he vows to publicly shame Hero at their wedding the next day.
It's a rash decision driven by hurt pride and a wounded ego.
It's a moment that really makes you think about the danger of jumping to conclusions without all the facts.
The power of appearances can be incredibly deceiving.
So Act 4 brings us to the wedding ceremony, and it's a complete train wreck.
Oh, it's painful to watch.
In front of everyone, Claudio denounces Hero, accusing her of infidelity and breaking off the engagement.
Poor Hero. She's completely blindsided by these accusations. She has no idea what's going on.
She faints from the shock and the grief, and her father, Leonardo, is beside himself with shame and anger.
He initially believes the accusations, which just shows how convincing Don John's deception was.
It's a powerful illustration of the destructive power of slander and how quickly a reputation can be tarnished.
Especially in a society where a woman's virtue was so closely tied to her worth.
Now, thankfully, Friar Francis, who knows Hero well, doesn't believe the accusations for a second.
He's convinced of her innocence.
And he comes up with a plan to buy them some time and hopefully expose the truth.
A risky plan, but they're desperate.
They decide to publicly announce that Hero has died from grief, and they hide her away while they try to figure out what really happened.
It's a gamble, but they're hoping that by pretending Hero is dead, they can elicit some remorse from Claudio and maybe even get him to investigate the situation more closely.
And in the midst of all this chaos, we see Beatrice and Benedict's relationship deepen in a really profound way.
Now that they both believe the other is in love with them, their true feelings start to come to the surface.
Beatrice is utterly devastated by what's happened to Hero, and she demands that Benedict prove his love for her by challenging Claudio to a duel.
It's a huge test of his loyalty to her and his belief in Hero's innocence.
And to his credit, Benedict agrees without hesitation. He's willing to risk his friendship with Claudio to defend the woman he loves.
It's a turning point for him. He's finally letting go of his cynicism and embracing love.
Now, while all this is going on, the local watchmen, led by the bumbling Dogberry and Furches, stumble upon a crucial piece of information.
They overhear Baracchio bragging about his role in Don John's scheme.
But of course, in typical Dogberry and Furches fashion, they completely mess up their attempts to report this information to Leonardo.
Their language is so convoluted and confusing, and Leonardo is so distracted by his own grief that he doesn't understand what they're trying to tell him.
It's a hilarious subplot, but it also highlights the importance of clear communication, especially in a crisis.
Sometimes the most important information gets lost in translation.
So Act V brings us to the resolution of the play. Leonardo, still believing that Hero is dead, confronts Claudio and Don Pedro, accusing them of causing her death with their false accusations.
He's heartbroken and furious.
And as promised, Benedict arrives and challenges Claudio to a duel.
He's standing by Beatrice and defending Hero's honor.
Finally, the watchmen manage to bring Baracchio before Leonardo, and he confesses everything, revealing Don John's plot and confirming Hero's innocence.
The truth is finally out in the open.
Claudio is consumed by guilt and remorse, and he begs Leonardo for forgiveness.
He realizes the gravity of his mistake and the pain he's caused.
Leonardo, still grieving, demands that Claudio perform a public act of repentance for Hero and then marry his niece, who he claims looks just like Hero.
It's a strange request, but Claudio agrees to it out of his deep regret.
So we have the second wedding ceremony, and the bride is veiled. When the veil is lifted, it's revealed to be Hero.
She's alive.
The friar's plan worked. Claudio is overjoyed, and Hero is vindicated.
It's a classic comedic ending, with joy and reconciliation triumphing over deception and despair.
And to top it all off, Beatrice and Benedict, their true feelings finally exposed, confess their love for each other and agree to get married as well.
And a double wedding. It's the perfect happy ending.
The play ends with a celebratory dance and the news that Don John has been captured and will face justice for his actions.
Order is restored, and everyone except Don John gets to live happily ever after.
So as you can see, Much Ado About Nothing is a roller coaster of emotions, from the lighthearted banter of Beatrice and Benedict to the dark depths of Don John's scheming.
It's a play that explores the complexities of love, the dangers of deception, and the importance of communication.
And it leaves you with a lot to think about, like how easily were Claudio deceived? What drove Don John to be so malicious? What does all of this tell us about human nature and the power of appearances?
It's a play that continues to resonate with audiences centuries after it was written because the themes it explores are timeless and universal.
So, if you haven't already, I highly recommend checking out Much Ado About Nothing. It's a truly delightful and thought-provoking play.
You won't regret it.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
Until then.